All right, so I'm from Dallas. Let's see, I know I'm like racially ambiguous a little bit. And so I'm actually Mexican. My mom is the youngest of 14, Mexican Army on her side of the family. And it's a big family. I don't even know all 14. Like I've met them, but I couldn't tell you. It's like huge family, hundreds now, because she's the youngest, so there's been a lot of kids. And then I've always struggled because I got this like racial diversity in me of that I am half Mexican and then I am, believe it or not, half African American. Yeah, you can root for that. Yeah, you did, I guess. And so I guess only one of y'all believed that I am. And so I know I'm a pale-skinned African American or a yellow bone or light-skinned or like Chris Brown, but I'm like the lightest skinned of African Americans. And so the issue is I really am African American. It's just that my dad is from South Africa, so he's one of the white South Africans, but it is African. Like it's from Africa. It's a very unique situation because I've been to Uganda several times. I preached there. I always say, I'm glad to be home. Like, this is where my dad is from. And they say, no, that doesn't count. South Africa doesn't count. And I'm like, well, where are they supposed to go? Like, are they going to Antarctica? Like, what country? And so I just say, I am whatever is convenient. Like, if I'm applying for a scholarship, I am African American, I'm Mexican, I am those. Like, but the irony is I can't speak any Spanish. All I know how to say, and I say it like you would think I could speak Spanish. Learned how to say, yo soy mexicano, pero mi madre no enseñó español. And if you know how to speak Spanish, what it means is, yo, I am Mexican, but my mom, she never taught me any Spanish, so I can't respond back to what you're saying. And the cooks at Papados taught me that because I worked there and they kept trying to talk to me. And I was like, yo, teach me how to say this because I want to learn, but clearly I couldn't learn it. And so it's a very interesting when you got these two different ethnicities and not too much on the Mexican side. And then I never even knew how to engage the South African side because my dad, yeah, it's an interesting deal there. And so I kind of bring it up though, ironically, is because I think the enemy used it a lot and then God redeemed it a lot. Is the enemy used it like, who am I? What am I supposed to be like? I don't think our ethnicity contains us and puts us in a cage, but it definitely influences who we are in a good way. Like certain ethnicities or cultures have certain music that they have, dancing, food, and it's a good thing when to not see the culture and not see the color is actually to not see something that can be beautiful. But for me, I'm like, what group do I belong in? Because the white people actually that I grew up with didn't think I was white because I was Mexican. And my dad definitely, if you see the way he is and talks, and he's not the average white man. And then, and then my mom, all that to say is the enemy used this like tension of like, you don't have a people or you don't have a group or I always say now, I'm pioneering what Mexican South Africans are like because I've never met another one. And so this is what we look like. This is how we dress. This is how we talk. But irony, again, is the enemy, man. I strongly believe the number one tool and strategy of the enemy is division. Because if you really think about it, I personally believe the church does not lack resources. I don't think the church lacks believers. I don't think the church lacks power. I don't think the church lacks good ideas, innovative conferences. It doesn't lack churches. I come from a city where there's 4,800 churches in Dallas, Texas. Some of those churches are massive, 4,800 churches. Just to get an idea, if you wanted to go to a different church every week, it would take you, to see all 4,800, it would take 92 years to go to each church every week. And so just looking at this crowd, most of us, we wouldn't be able to make it in those 92 years. Including myself, I just turned 30. I've joined the old club as well. I'm playing. Okay. I'm joking. Hey, my girlfriend acts like I'm so old because I'm in the 30 club now. And by the way, I always say, I'm not, we got to be real here. You guys mess with millennials all the time. I'm going to say a couple of things about, and I won't say older people anymore. I got a euphemism. I always say, okay, I won't use the word old people, because even me, I told her yesterday, in sincerity, I said, babe, okay, I know I can joke about it, but don't call me old, like for real. And because it really did bother me. And the euphemism is, instead of saying older, I call them chronologically superior. So, yeah, it's good. and the key word is superior. And so I would say, so we're chronologically inferior. And so then it like redeems the word. It's like there's chronological superiority in the room. And so, again, going back to the tension, real quick before I talk about another tension, if the enemy cannot defeat us, the gates of hell, again, Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. So I don't think we lack resources. I don't think we lack churches. I don't think we lack ideas. I don't think we lack anything really in the body as much as we lack unity in the church. We lack trust between generations, between denominations, between ethnicities. It's the lack of relationship within the body. Because I'm convinced if the enemy cannot defeat the church, and whenever Jesus says something, it always comes true. So I would have been like, if I was the enemy and I heard Jesus say that, I would have thought, spoiler alert, that's how it's going to end. If I can't defeat the church, then let me do this. Let me try to divide the church. Then there'll never be the church. There'll always be the black church and the white church and the young church and the older church and the Latino church and the Asian church. It's never going to be the church. It's going to be a whole bunch of churches that are doing a whole bunch of things. But I don't think the enemy is afraid of big churches. I think he's afraid of a unified church. And so that's a big part of my heart is how do we become a unified church? And so just to give a clear picture, too, of how I think this is, I've seen this lately. Since I'm 30, I'm getting to that age where all my friends are basically either really, really serious about trying to get married or already married. So I end up at a lot of weddings. And what I found is when I go to different friends' weddings, they're predictable if they're homogenous, and they're awesome if they're not. They're predictable in the sense that white weddings, I don't know how many white weddings y'all been to, but when I go to young white weddings, I always know it's going to be a little bit of Pinterest-y vibes. If you know what Pinterest is, it's like there's going to be a lot of like tweed and twine and wood, and the girl like is going to go all out, like with Pinterest ideas to make this thing as Pinterest as she can make it, and very Instagrammable. But when it comes to the music part, I'm always like, okay, like I don't know if y'all noticed, but white people tend to love songs at weddings that give instructions, and so they love songs that are like, to the left, to the left, to the left. And all the girls will be like, come on, this is my song. And they'll grab their guy. And I'm always like, this isn't your song. This is the only song you know how to dance to. And so this is why you love it, where it's like, slide to the right, slide to the left. Like, think about it. Like, there are all these songs, like, do the stanky leg, do the stanky leg. Like, it tells you when to do it, what to do. And they love these songs. And so I'm like, I always tell my girlfriend, she is a white girl. And I was like, babe, I just can't be typical. It's the opposite of what I ever want to be, and that is the most typical songs you're always going to see at a white wedding. And then, though, if I go to a black wedding, black wedding and African wedding is two different types of things. Because I've been to an African graduation party recently, last year. It said 2 p.m. on Sunday. I heard that African, there's CP time, and then there's probably African time. And African time's a little bit more farther than CP time. And so for me, I did show up, though, at 2, and the doors were locked. Like, the building was not open at all. I'm not joking. Like, no one was even there, and they said, well, you should know. I'm like, no, you have to at least have the doors open. Like, you could show up an hour and a half later, but you cannot not let me even get into the room when you wrote it on paper and mailed it to me. And so it's going to be a different vibe, but when the music happens, I'm like, yo, finally. Like, we're going to learn some new music. We're going to learn some new songs. We're going to learn some new dance moves. Like, it's actually going to be fun. And if you are talking about Mexican wedding, I was like, food is going to be on point. Like, the hospitality, and things actually could be falling apart. But they're going to have so much of a good time and be happy. They won't even notice. Like, my family is so joyful, and I'm like, this is the lowest quality event I've ever been to. But they will enjoy it. They won't even see these things, like, at all. And my point is, when I go to weddings, though, when it's a biracial couple, or just, it doesn't always have to be a biracial couple. It could just be a couple that was intentional with diverse relationships and friendships. Then I know, yo, this is going to be awesome. Like, we're going to have that vibe and Instagrammable pictures. We're going to start on time. We're going to have great food. We're going to do, like, the whole thing in an awesome, incredible way. And just to give a real life picture, like, think about the royal wedding. The royal wedding, I mean, it was about this couple, but how much attention was put on the African American pastor and choir in the back, like, yo, this has never been done before. That pastor went in on this crowd, and it was incredible. And that has probably not got so much global attention, but because they threw in diversity, it's like, we want to see it, or like we are surprised by it. There's I would even say an anointing that God gives on when his brothers and sisters come together. And so I know that we get it when it comes to racial reconciliation, but I also want us to today get it when it comes to generational reconciliation. Because sometimes we are very clear to and often very prone to make fun of the next generation. And we just act like it's not that big of a deal. But if we ever had the kind of culture of making fun of millennials, like if we had the same type of culture of making fun of certain ethnicities, it would totally not be received the same way. In fact, the irony is a lot of times we have churches and people, even just congregations, that want to reach the next generation while simultaneously want to make fun of them. And I don't know about y'all, but like I don't think any group of people is ever going to want to join another group of people that likes making fun of their group of people. And so we got to like check our hearts of, real quick before I say this, is I am sorry that millennials are so easy to diss on. I am a millennial that's frustrated with millennials. And it was because chronologically superior people invested in me and poured into me and believed in me. I got saved, and I got March 8, 2006, and 2 weeks later, I had someone disciple me and pour into me and absolutely transform and change my life. Like, without that man taking me under his wing, his name was Kevin Batista, I'm not who I am today. Because I know a lot of young people that got saved before they're young, or while they're young, but I don't know a lot of people that got discipled when they're young. I know a lot of young people that got saved, and then they wandered, and then about college or a little bit later, they fell away. But I found the most strong, mature, godly, humble, honor-giving young Christians I know that have, especially if they have a national business, nonprofit, or church, if they're in their 20s and they're doing something like that, there's always someone older behind them that really made them who they were. And that's just the way God designed it. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, talk about the tension of generations, because if we don't get that right, I really think the enemy's going to get us and win in the end. And so one of those areas where we can see the tension play out a lot is, just real quick, how many of you guys are parents even of someone under, let's just say like 30 years old? Yeah? Raise your hand high, and then how is that going for y'all? Pretty good? It's a mystery? That's good, that's good. Let's talk about, can we admit that it's kind of hard for this generation to figure out what they want to do with their life? And it's kind of hard, and it's not only like you guys think it's hard for us to want to figure out what we want to do. Like, there's a real, I wouldn't only say that we're searching, but also the system I think that used to work for maybe you guys doesn't always work for this generation. I want to kind of talk about that system and kind of get some clarity of how do we build, again, bridges instead of walls or throw rocks from a distance. And so let's talk about, I want to talk about kind of a little bit about the American dream, break it down, and then say, how can we kind of fix, especially this is going to be if you're a parent and or if you're not a parent of a next gen, but you want to be more intentional with the next gen, this would be a huge way for you to mentor, disciple one. And so I'm going to pull up the slide, and we're going to talk about first, the American dream starts with college and just going to college. Basically, yeah, you go to college, ideally in 4 years. That, yeah, it has changed a little bit for the next generation. And then you get a job. And so you stay at your job for a good while, you go up the ranks in your job, and then after you get a job, you get married, you join a church, and you get plugged in. And if you stay faithful to those in those areas, you're going to continue to excel, and you can one day reach the American dream. Is the idea. And by the way, when I say the American dream, what I don't mean is not retiring as full as like. When I say the American dream, I don't mean. Sometimes we make the American dream like a bad thing, like it's greedy and it's evil and it's just about wealth. And there can be that, but more what I mean is that you want to provide a better life for your kids and for those coming after you. And it's motivated by provision. But for the American dream, real quick, is what happened when some people, I want to break down this whole American dream before I go a little further of what happened is, let's just talk about college, job, marriage, church, and the American dream. So for college, let's talk about how this system isn't exactly the same that it was, let's just say 30, 40 years ago. College, for example. Can we all agree that it's unfortunate that colleges seem to have a better guarantee of putting our kids into debt than getting them a job? Like, that's not a great guarantee. Like, some of you guys are financially amening that. Like, you feel the weight of that. Because you're helping one of your children, and it's just like, I'm not sure if you're even going to get a job right after this. Or I've seen so many of my young friends get a degree, and it doesn't get them a job, and it's like they're not even doing something remotely close to what they majored in. And can we also agree that a bachelor's degree does not set you apart today as it once did like 30 years ago? And so it is a little different. So you got parents that are always like, you got to go to college. And then you got young people that are like, dang, I've seen a lot of my friends do this and not end up with a job or end up at Starbucks or whatever. And it's like, but they were trying to be an architect. And I could see maybe how that could lead to architecture. Like, it's very complex drinks you got to make, but like, I don't see the fast track to architecture. And so it can be difficult when you don't see the path working out. Then you got marriage, then you get a job. For the job, I do think one thing my generation grew up with a lot is they grew up with parents, especially fathers, that did jobs that they probably absolutely hated for years, like proud to say, I've been here for 15 years, and be like, but hate that job. It was so evident that they hated it. Like, and it just sucked the soul out of them. But it was like a badge of honor to be like, but I'm faithful and persistent with this job. And here's the thing I now, as I get older, recognize this because they truly were sacrificing for their family and sacrificing to provide a better life. And the idea that I am doing this for you, and I'm going to get back to that, but a lot of young people are having a question, do I want to do this when I don't know if I want to sacrifice every single day doing something I abhor just to provide money? Because 52% of young millennials, at least, according to Business Journal, would rather take a drastic pay cut for a job that made a difference. And so you got to think about that before the generations would take a drastic, like, soul cut, if you will, like cut to their soul in order to make more money, while this generation will do the opposite. Is I don't care if I make significantly less money, not just a little less money, significantly less money in order to have a job that made a difference and seemed fulfilling. So very different. So when you're motivating them for a job, that mindset of I want to provide a better life, and I want you to be able to provide a better life for yourself and your kids may not translate as well. A real quick thing on job too is that many young people lost their parents and especially their fathers to a job. What I mean by lost them, I mean like there's a big issue in the church today that I really don't think we talk about a lot, is that the lack of fathers and husbands and just men in the church. And even if they are physically in the church, like there's a difference between, they would call a deadbeat dad a dad who just abandoned their family. But there's also a different type of dad that we don't talk about too much, and that's the dad that didn't abandon their family physically, but spiritually and emotionally, he is absent. And that really has impacted the way a mother and wife has to take the weight of trying to lead a family spiritually, and it's hard and it's weighty. And then you got kids, especially for my family, it's 3 boys. My dad's not a believer, still to this day, and my mom trying to lead us all. Thank God, all 3 of us are believers. But it's a lot of her, and I watched how anxious and difficult, and I have so much grace on her, seeing like she was trying to carry so much, which was why I think there's so many praying moms. It's because it's like, yo, we need God to come through in my husband's heart and in my children's heart. And so seeing their dads like give up their soul and all their best first fruits, even if you will, to their job, they're like, man, I don't know if I care about a job that much. It seems like a sacrifice to go to the degree that my parents and grandparents went to. As well as, I'm going to tell you about a story about, I'll tell you now. So my dad, he really pushed this financial thing. And before I tell you this, I just want to point out this whole American dream thing, it can lead to a wake-up call. There's a book called Halftime It talks about how you try to move from success to significance. And the idea came from a lot of people getting to their 40s, 50s, and 60s, achieving the American dream, being faithful to this process, doing jobs they hated but made great money, and then at the end of their life had the home, had the car, had the second home potentially, had the life, had the 401k, had the college paid for, all that kind of stuff. Just a way better life than they ever would have imagined. And then at the end of their life, they're like, man, like, is this is it? Like, that's all? And they moved from success to significance after the American dream. Let's see if that's up there. Okay. And so this is what people would call a midlife crisis. Is they having a wake-up call, and they're thinking, how do I change from a provision mindset as my motivation to a passion and purpose motivation, and think about how do I use my time, talent, and treasure to, for the rest of my life, to give back, and to how do I use everything I've gained to be more purposeful with my life. Here's something that's really big, and I'll go into my dad's story, is I didn't want to get to the end of my life to have a midlife crisis. And I didn't want to get to do every decision, work, job, and all that off of provision. And many young people are pursuing their passion and their purpose before provision. And I know the mindset tends to be like, well, you got to provide and then you get the luxury to pursue your passion and purpose. But the irony is a lot of young people don't want to think about provision until they're pursuing their passion and their purpose. And I'm not trying to say one is better than the other. We'll get into that. But from my dad, so I have successfully dropped out of college 3 times. In the first time I dropped out, I didn't tell my dad, I didn't tell my mom. I had a 1.8 GPA. And I just really struggled at school. And I was doing, I started a nonprofit when I was 19. It was taking off. It was doing a lot of great things. And I just felt like, man, the biggest thing hindering me at this time from succeeding anymore and taking more opportunities and all this is actually school right now. And the number one thing taking money from me right now is actually school right now. Now, I'm not a non-go-to-college guy. If you're going to be an architect, a lawyer, a doctor, things that absolutely require school, you need to do that. And if you are going to do something that doesn't require school, but definitely would require some education and school, then I would just say make sure you pick a school that's definitely marked by that thing and is so successful at getting people jobs in that thing. If you have a kid that's in college just to figure out what they want to do, I could give you about 40 to 80,000, maybe even 100,000 reasons why you shouldn't do that. It's called dollars. Yeah, don't do that. Like, it is not an experience. You think people in the 20s and 30s were like, go ahead and experience college so that you can find out what you want to do. Even that idea is something that's very new and is not helpful for young people. It might seem like, well, that's what everyone else is doing. I personally would not do that for young people. You need to know what you want to do before you're going to go pay to learn what you want to do. For me, when I dropped out, I went home and I was going to live with my parents. 26 million young people do that in America. So I thought maybe I could just be one of those 26 million. So I came home. My mom's cool with it. She's cooking some food for us. I'm at the home. She's like asking how my day was. And I put myself in my old room. But my dad, he just comes home. He kind of looks in, sees I'm there, sees I'm eating. I think he can just tell, okay, I see what's happening. And he doesn't say anything to me or my mom. He just goes into my room, and he takes my bags, and he just throws it on the front yard. And the first time I didn't know what he was doing. The second time, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what's going on. Like, and I just went up to him, like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, and I'm not smiling at all when I'm doing this. But he said, he wouldn't talk for a second, and finally, I'm like, Dad, seriously, what are you doing? Like, why? I could tell what he's doing. I was like, why are you doing it? And he said, Grant, when you decided to drop out of college, you decided to grow up and be a man. And so you have to go get a job. That's what people that are men do. And so he's like, go ahead and find one. Like, he didn't say it with a smile again, and I was really frustrated. I was actually really mad at my dad. I was like, Dad, all my friends get to live with their parents. You know how many people live with their parents? Like, just give me a month, 2, maybe. Like, let me get settled down, find a job. There was zero grace. And maybe that was the South African side of him. I don't know. Like, it's just like, because he really just, it wasn't even a 1% chance he was going to do that. No convincing. And so I had to go and find a friend to stay with and here's the thing is, you think I got to pick my passion and purpose job the next day. I needed a job. I don't care what job. And so I ended up at a place called Papados. And so Papados, that's how I end up. Papados love out here. All right, and so I end up at Papados, and here's a big part of the story that I really encourage is that, like, I'm so thankful, and I do think, although I'm saying young people want a passion and a purpose, because I just want to show this midlife crisis and them chasing after this, then finding themselves in the significance at the end of their life. My dad is a CPA accountant, and I'm a nonprofit leader. That we couldn't be more different in how we pursue life. But the irony is, my dad now and my parents, they sold their house after we moved out. They bought an RV, and they just travel America. And I think they're living the millennial dream. Like, I'm working way more than they work. Like, I actually, like, have a job. My dad has legitimately tried to borrow money from, he did. He borrowed money from me. And I wanted to say, when you decided to sell your house, you decided to be a man. And so you're going to need to find a job, Dad. But again, it's just a quick full circle of, like, my dad hits that midlife crisis of, like, do we actually want to even live here? Do we actually want to do this job? Now that our kids are out of the home, what do we actually want to do? And we realize maybe it's not what we're currently doing. Like, and so there might be variations of this in your story, but I do think it's a good lesson of, like, this mindset of provision or passion or purpose. It's not one or the other, but young people are not having a midlife crisis. I would say young people are having a quarter life crisis. And so instead of asking the significance question at the end of their life, they want to ask that at the beginning of their life. Before they choose their major, before they take their job, before they get married, before they join a church, and before they even choose the American dream, which I do think has been replaced with, I'm not just trying to have an American dream, I'm trying to change the world. Like, they have exposure and opportunity to do global things. So they're not just thinking about America, they're thinking about the whole world. And that is a big shift in the way we see life. And so I always ask young people, don't you feel like your parents would be so proud, especially Christian parents, would be so proud and excited if you told them, Mom, Dad, I really feel like I want to be a lawyer or an architect or a doctor or a banker or any job basically that makes a little bit more than $100,000 a year. They would be like, oh my God, I think God has called you to do that. I feel like let's get you books. I want to get you mentors. I'm so proud of you, honey. Like, that is incredible. Yes, I support that so much. Like, how can we get behind you? So easy to get their support in that. But I was like, but just flip it. Like, what if you're in med school or you're going to be an architect, you're 2 years in, or you're like, whatever, you're successful in that job, and you go to a Christian conference, or you're reading in the Word, and God just pricks your heart, and all of a sudden He's shifting what you may want to do with your life, and you find yourself being like, Mom, it's Thanksgiving. Mom and Dad, I got an announcement. I love Jesus so much, and He's been talking to me so much. I know I've been doing 2 or 3 years of being an architect, and God has been doing so much there, or being a doctor, or a lawyer, or whatever. But I really feel like God has called me to be a church planter, or an artist, or a worship leader. Most parents would be like, whoa, hold on, real quick. I love that. I love God. I love what He wants to do in your life. But before you make you haven't dropped out of school or anything, right? Like, before you do anything too quick, okay? Because I know you're passionate. I know, but can we just please pray about this? Like, let's pray. Let's pray for a little while. Like, let's give it 2 years, maybe 10 years. Let's give it 10 years of prayer, and then consider if you really want to do that, and we want to give this over to the Lord to make sure. It's all of a sudden we want to go into deep prayer. It's not like, oh yeah, absolutely. It's like, and I always think, man, Lord, I want to tell these parents, like, so you think that the enemy is trying to trick your kids into being a worship leader? So we got to pray through that to make sure it's not the enemy, because that's a unique strategy that he may have. It's like, the enemy's got this new strategy of Beelzebub, the father of lies, is trying to get kids to be church planners and worship leaders and missionaries across our country. Like, why are we praying so hard about this? Like, Lucifer is doing these things. Like, you got to really think about that. Like, we are so serious about praying about if we should do what's so clearly glorifying to God, but if it makes really, really good money and we could add God to the mix, then it's for sure him. Wow. That is a little bit of the American dream and the gospel mixing together, and I don't know if they mix well. Like that's where we should have a lot more division and tension, is between those two things. That the gospel actually has a lot of things at odds with the American dream. And so, what am I saying? I'm not saying that young people are right to pursue their passion and their purpose. I'm just saying we're not right as a whole, as all generations, to nix one or the other. Because we all know if you pursue your passion and your purpose and never think about provision, you'll be what is right now happening to a lot of young people. I call the book The Passion Generation because it's a very passionate generation. But it's very possible to have a passion generation that is absolutely broke. And that is the reality. And not only broke, potentially in big debt. And so you can't ignore provision, but I would say if you just pursue provision, it's very empty. And if you just pursue passion, it's impossible. You have to have a mix of the two. However, what I found is most parents only push questions or concerns around, wow, what the heck is that? Questions around, it was literally saying, here are the movie options for Mission Impossible 3. If you only pursue, there are many parents that only functionally help their kids consider provisional mindset. And so I don't know any parent that's like, yes, I want my kids to gain the whole world, even if it means they lose their soul. I've never met a Christian parent that wants that. But functionally, when I ask kids, how often do your parents have conversations with you and guide you through and support you in pursuing your passion or your purpose? Or I ask them, how often do your parents share concern over how much money you make or don't make, and just anything related to money, especially y'all that are outside of your home, don't live there anymore, you're in college or out, and they're like, yo, that's like one of the number one reasons they ever call, is about money. Like for me, when I was starting my nonprofit, I didn't make money much for the first year and a half, and there wasn't not one single conversation, not one, that my dad didn't have with me where money didn't come up when he called. I always knew it was going to come up eventually, where he's like, and he's like, I'm concerned you're not making it. It's always a concern for that. Now, with this, it helped me realize he's not trying to make it harder on me, because he actually loves me. And so it's ironic, is like, we need to better like coach and help our kids, and not enable them, but just guide them, because this generation is so passionate, but it does need guidance in what is their purpose and what is their passion. And so two quick things. One, I would say a hard thing, I'll say kind of how do you guide? One, clearly I've said we aren't trying to lower the bar so you just let any kid pursue any purpose or passion. That's impossible. Like I had one guy at TI. Do you know what TI, that business is? In Texas, it's Texas Instruments. They make calculators, but apparently they make way more than that, but that's what I knew him for. The one guy said, well, are you saying I should just let my kid, like, if he loves video games, you should just go be a video game guy? And I'm like, if he works hard enough to do it, and he really will put in the effort and work so hard that he's one of the best at it, then yes. But if he's not, then no. I think you should create deadlines. Like, deadlines drive decisions. It's very important. Deadlines drive decisions for young people. You cannot just ambiguously say, grow up, and we're going to help you. And it's like, when do we not get any financial support? When can I not live in your house anymore? When all these things help. Like my dad not letting me in, actually, although I didn't like it, it led me to a season of dependence like never before. Because I'm like, dang, God, I don't know what to do next, but I know you're all I really have right now, and I need guidance like never before. And here's what's ironic, because I got into the Word more than I ever got into the Word before. I started just praying like I never prayed before, and that was not even close to as hard as other seasons that have now come, but it has made me think about something. If you think about the most intimate seasons you've ever had with God, where you read the Word regularly, you prayed more sincerely, you just had this like intimacy with Him, wouldn't you say they happen to be mostly difficult times? Yeah. Like they happen to be times that are a little bit harder, where you realize you're not in control. Here's what I have found is, if we save our kids from times when it's harder, then we're actually saving our kids from the Savior. Because they never get to grow confident in Him. They just get to be enabled by you. And it's a big, big deal as they get enabled by you. there's a verse I want to show y'all. It's even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you guys know it. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. This is huge, is that I'm walking through a valley and I'm growing able to not have fear because I know you're with me. And I wonder how many young people read this verse and they think, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for mom is with me. Her purse and her second chances, they enable me. Don't nudge anyone here, y'all. If there's married couples, don't nudge. Taking a picture of it. I had a friend in San Antonio. There was a man, and he like literally put his hand on his wife's head. He's like, "This lady right here, that's her." I want to say that so to say, do not enable us, but also know you're raising the bar. You are guiding us, and I want to say also about the provision thing is that I realized later in life and now and for you guys that no one's trying to push a provision mindset because all they care about is money. It's because they truly are wanting to provide a better life for their kids and came from a parent and grandparent generation that had to provide a better life for their kids. Like, you won't always hear this from young people, but like, one, thank you for getting us to a position that we can even have the luxury to pursue our passion and our purpose. Because Lord knows no one was in their 20s and 30s coming out of the Great Depression or in the Great Depression growing up as a teenager thinking, I'm only going to wait until I get a job that is my passion or my purpose. That was an entire generation that didn't even get that luxury at all. They had no option but to do jobs that maybe and probably they did not enjoy to provide a better life for themselves and their kids. And so I could see how that created, we need to do a little better to provide a little more. But here's where the enemy wins is if he gets, you have done it. Like, we have provided better life every generation for our kids, that now you got kids that of course are going to start thinking more than just provision. They're going to think passion and purpose. So wouldn't the enemy win if he doesn't get the most godly generation this godly generation of parents to be able to be a part of the story of guiding their kids? And so to finish, I would just say in the book I give 15 questions for how do you guide your kids, especially if you got kids that are in the home still and or especially in middle school and high school, is how do you guide them through some of the questions to figure out their passion and their purpose? So just a couple questions like, I don't think that we need to only consider one. I think we need to do all three. So there's a slide I have with passion, purpose, and provision. Is start with passion, then purpose, and then provision. And so just a couple passion questions. Questions like this with your kids is, what makes you feel alive? What job would you take a drastic pay cut for? What could you talk about for hours? What subjects did you enjoy most in school? What have you done in your life that you're really proud of? What makes you different? What bothers you when you see it done poorly? What problems or injustices break your heart? What are the top 3 values you look for in a friend? So you get these questions. Then there's some purpose questions. And then imagine you've spent time, not just one conversation, over time you've started to even ask these questions, encourage these questions, and help them narrow their passion, their purpose. And then you start saying, hey, now that we have a more clear idea of maybe where you want to land in life, let's start talking about how to get you there. But a lot of times we start there. You need to do this job, and you need to take these classes in high school so they count for college, and then you got to do this and get all these things. And they're like, but I don't even. And it's eventually they can cut you off. Like, I've seen it. If you ever watched not Good Will Hunting. If you ever watch Dead Poet Society, that's a great movie that shows this tension where a kid wants to do his passion, but his dad's like, I've worked too hard to get you into this college so that you can just throw it away by doing theater arts. So he has to go behind his dad's back in order to do what he loves. And I think a lot of this generation are doing that. They're just cutting their parents out of the conversation because they're like, yo, they don't get it. And so here are the questions, if you start there and then lead to provision, is what sacrifices will you have to make? We've talked about your passion. We've talked about your purpose. We know where that is, but it still is going to require work. You're not going to get there tomorrow. It's going to take time. What extra time will you have to give? What kind of mentors will you need to seek? What kind of friends will you need to surround yourself with? What kind of friends will you need to avoid? What time wasters will you have to cut? What is the minimum salary you can live with? What education will you have to pursue? What habits will you have to break? What habits will you have to form? Would you be willing to downsize your lifestyle? What books or podcasts would you need to invest in? And it goes on, but now you become a coach. and not just a critic. And then you get to actually help them get there, because we have coddled this generation a lot. That's what parents sometimes have done. And now they're getting totally, we've either been coddling them as parents or critiquing them as bosses. And there's somewhere in the middle that God wants us to be, where we get to coach them, and we get to mentor them, and we get to disciple them. Because coaches actually don't, it's an interesting thing, where you can't do the work for the player, but you do lose when the player loses. And you challenge them to a higher standard, but again, you can't do the work for them. It's like, and you're not just throwing rocks at them to throw rocks at them, you actually really have an investment in them winning. It's a very interesting posture. Chick-fil-A said, the reason we have such great young people that have high standards and carry a great culture is because we don't just try to hire bosses, we try to hire coaches. And they said, legitimately, we think soccer coaches. They said, we think to ourselves, would this be a kind of soccer coach or a football coach that I would want my kid to play for? And if they can do that, then I know they can lead these young people, because they're going to feel like he's on their team, not just telling them what to do. And so this coaching concept is incredible. And just to encourage y'all, is discipleship and coaching is not a burden, it's a blessing. And so it's a beautiful thing, and it's a commandment also. But I want to start with the good and then say, and you're supposed to do it. So my last story is, and just my favorite story of showing it is a blessing, is I have a mentor from a couple years ago, and he played for what people consider God's team. It's called the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't even care about the Cowboys, so you know. So, hey, because I do know enough to know I don't think our teams like each other, but I really don't care. And I don't care about the Cowboys, so I'll be with y'all. It does not matter to me. But he happened to play with Troy Aikman. His name's Chad Hennings, and he played with Aikman, and I don't even know the other guys that were good at that time. It was when the Cowboys were good. And so, he told me the story that when around that time he had kids, and his kids, little kids, wanted a little puppy, right? And so I don't know if you're dog people or cat people, but puppies, man, they are crazy, rambunctious, passionate. They jump all over the place. I don't know about y'all, when I had a little puppy, you open the door, they try to jump on people or run away. They go to the bathroom all over the place. They just high energy, kind of like young people, just like passionate, lovable. You want to take pictures with them, but it's like they're kind of loose cannon. Then this puppy, though, over time, because it started growing older, and the older you get, they found this dog started getting a little boring. Because 10 years after Bo, this puppy, got older, Bo was about 12 years old, human years, so in dog years was really, really old. And they said, legitimately, he told me a story about how Bo got so old that he really barely moved anymore. He just kind of was on his mat, and he would just, that's it. Where he used to try to jump on people and he used to try to do this, he didn't do it anymore. He just got up to go eat food, then go sit back on his mat, and then he'd go eat food, get back on his mat, eat food, get on his mat. That's the biggest movement he had. And I kind of think that happens to us as Christians when we get older, is we just kind of relax and be comfortable, go to church, and then just come back and not really do that much, and then go to church again, and then come back. And that's kind of just the routine. And the younger generation is like, yo, I don't want to turn Christianity and following Jesus into a hobby, personally. I actually if I'm going to do this, which it doesn't look compelling, but if I'm going to do it, I'm not doing it that way. So then what happened in the story is they got this little puppy called DeSoto. Now DeSoto, like young people, crazy, passionate, all that. And again, they said that Bo, the old dog, was supposed to die that year. The vet said, hey, this is his last year, love him well, he's kind of done. Even the kids were like, Dad, can we please get another dog? This dog's so boring now. We love him. He's our family dog, but we can't play with him. He doesn't even protect us, Dad. They said he'll just put his head on the mat. He used to jump on people when they came through the door. Now he just looks up, he puts his head up and says, what's up? And puts his head back down, and he doesn't even protect us. He's boring. And so they got a new puppy named DeSoto, and DeSoto, very passionate, basically had to start this whole process over again. However, DeSoto had his old trusty friend, Bo, there to kind of show him, this is where you go to the bathroom, this is where you eat, this is where we sleep. And he learned from DeSoto, from Bo. And the interesting thing is, they said, and all of a sudden, Bo, the old dog, started playing again, and started going outside again, and started doing stuff again. And he's like, man, Grant, I swear it's because that young puppy would not let that dog die. He just kept bugging him, but it was bringing like new life out of him. He was doing things he had not done in a long time. And he said this thing because what happened was the dog ended up living 4 more years. And he's like, I swear it's because of that dog. And he said a line we've all heard, and I'll finish with saying, the line, he said, I know you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can actually give an old dog a new puppy. Okay. And I would tell y'all, we need some old dogs that would get new puppies. And it's actually, again, not a burden, it's a blessing. And I would go so far, and I told him, man, you know, I actually think when you give an old dog a new puppy, you give them a new purpose. And so if you feel like this Christian thing has maybe felt like or becoming a little boring or like a hobby, maybe it's not like because the church isn't doing enough for you. Maybe it's like it's at the point where you're ready to go and do what God has called you to do. And his last words should be our first priority. And his last words were go and make disciples. And so if you're not discipling anyone in the church or in this city, or you don't have someone that calls you the person that disciples them, I personally think dancers that don't dance are probably very bored. I think chefs that don't cook are probably very bored. I think painters that don't paint are probably very bored. And I'm convinced that disciples that don't disciple are extremely bored. And so our encouragement is, again, it's not a burden, it's a blessing. We need you guys so badly. We apologize for not being the most hungry, honorable generation, but we don't become that without y'all's help. And I am who I am because of men like Raymond Harris, Eric Swanson, Kevin Batista, God, all these people that have poured in my life and made me who I am. And there is a dying, depressed, even sometimes suicidal generation out there that needs y'all to say, hey, I'm kind of done with this. I'll go play with y'all. Like you said last night, man, it was like 10 o'clock at night and all the young guys then wanted to go walk to get dessert. And he's like, and I just said, yes. But inside I'm like, I got to go to bed. He's like, yeah, that's it. That is a big deal. That's a big deal. And so it's not as hard as you think it is. Just go invest and be with us. Thank y'all for everything you do. Love y'all.